Good evening, everybody. Just past 6 p.m, I declare tonight's Ordinary Council meeting for February open. The Shire of Capel acknowledges the traditional custodians, the Wadandi people, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to members of all communities and cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. I think we have everybody here tonight. Are there any applications for leave of absence that have previously been? No, not tonight. A response to previous public questions taken on notice. Are there any of those?
There are none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We move to public question time. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? I think I'll call Bronwyn Mutton forward.
Hello, my name is Bronwyn Mutton. I've lived in Capel for 36 years. Many people visit Capel in southwest WA because they love seeing the remnant bushland with marri, jarrah, tuart, eucalypts and also the mid-storey banksias and many low shrubs. This area is within the only area in Australia declared as having one of the world's hotspots of high flora biodiversity. When remnant bushland is cleared, the whole ecosystems with insects, birds, lizards, small mammals disappear, never to return. I have two questions. One, why does the Shire of Capel allow, little by little, these areas of remnant bushland to be cleared by various owners of small properties? And two, when will the time come that the Shire of Capel declares that small areas of the remaining remnant bushland must not be cleared for temporary economic benefit of landowners or other reasons? Thank you.
Thanks. I'll ask the Acting CEO for a response.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question. Sorry, I forget to turn that on every time. To question one, the construction of buildings on individual lots may be subject to the requirement for development approval. In instances where this involves the clearing of native vegetation, the assessment of the proposal is likely to involve consultation with other statutory agencies to assess the impact from an environmental, amenity and bushfire perspective, and each case is assessed on its merits. The outcome of the assessment may or may not support removal of vegetation. Second part, the current statutory framework requires that removal of natural vegetation in areas not connected to a public reticulated water supply to comply with clause 5.3.6 of the Shire's Town Planning Scheme, which states that, quote, an owner or occupier of a lot zoned for residential and which is not connected to a public reticulated water supply shall, in part B, limit clearing of natural vegetation on the lot to a building envelope having an area of 1,000 square metres and any additional clearing necessary to establish a drive and any fire breaks required pursuant to and an order made under Section 33 of the Bushfires Act 1954 as amended, close quote. In order for there to be additional control in relation to the removal of native or remnant vegetation at a local government level, it would be necessary for provisions to be incorporated into the town planning scheme or for a policy to be written and adopted by the Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we've been provided with advance notice of a question from Mrs. Judy Hearn of Peppermint Grove Beach. I've had a look at the question and it's more of a statement and an attempt to misuse question time. There's not a legitimate question in here, so I'm not going to take that question. She has also given us a second question in regard to the draft capital works. So, Mrs. Hearn.
Well, thank you for my name on the chair. At least that made me feel welcome. I'd like to know why my first question is not deemed a proper question.
Well, as I said, it's a statement more than a question, and it's potentially defamatory.
Which part?
Yes. Look, we're not here to have a debate. I'd like you to move to your second question, or else retake your seat.
Well, I would like it noted in the minutes that you were unable to explain to me what about my question could possibly be defamatory, and since my question was directed to the Shire Executive, it was one that I hope they would be able to answer.
Mrs. Hearn, when you come to, not sure whether you're familiar, but when you come to council
I'm very
meetings,
familiar.
you're very familiar? Well, then you should know that when you come to a council meeting to ask a question, you're addressing your question to the council,
Yes.
of which I'm the presiding member. So you're directing the question to me, in effect, not to the staff. That's how it works.
Okay. I would be grateful if all of my comments were placed in the minutes. Is that possible?
No.
No.
You don't run the council.
I'm not
You're not
asking
on
to
the
run
council.
the council, sir. I'm asking to have my comments put in the minutes.
You've asked to ask some questions, and they're here. I've asked you to ask the second question, not to engage in a debate.
Okay. My second question is that tonight's agenda proposes inclusions for the draft capital works budget for 2021-22 under items 14.1, 14.2, 14.3 and 14.4. That is for provision and maintenance for the crucial local government works programs for roads, car parks and paths, and trails and drainage. Provision in the 2021 budget in these areas will be, or is suggested as nearly $3 million, and it will absorb approximately 25% or more of the Shire budget after staffing provisions. I note the papers acknowledge consultation with a wide variety of interested stakeholders. However, in 2020, councillors spoke of the high importance they would place on feedback from the community consultation surveys that were undertaken at the end of 2020 as foundational to their planning decisions. Were the major recommendations of priority works areas for spending by the ratepayers via the community surveys, and indeed their wisdom in regard to requirements for future provision by the Shire, considered by the councillors in drawing up these plans of works? If so, what were the priorities and advice from the ratepayers? And if not, when will the results of the two surveys, the meetings and the drop-in sessions be made available to ratepayers and to guide the councillors?
Thank you for your question. The results of the surveys have not been provided to councillors yet, but I note you're talking about the capital works budgets for the 2021-22 overall budget, and that budget has not been considered or debated by council yet. It's a long way away from fruition, and I fully expect that by the time we get around to deciding what will be in and what won't be in the 2021-22 budget, the councillors will have a chance to assess and absorb the feedback from the survey. So that should be taken into account.
And the ratepayers, when will they hear the results of the surveys?
I'm not sure.
Is it your intention to share those
Yes,
results?
as soon as possible.
We look forward to it. Thank you for your indulgence.
Mr. Brian Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, all. My first question is, on January 21st, 2021, Tim Wong See, on his ABC Southwestern Great Southern Breakfast program, replayed an interview conducted by reporter Georgia Lonnie with the Capel Shire President Michael Southwell in regard to the motion that he had placed on the agenda for the January 21 Council meeting. During part of the informative interview, Councillor Southwell stated in brackets, I'm a volunteer firefighter, by the way, have been for a long time, for many years, so I'm attacking myself. I am a volunteer firefighter, close inverted commas. We all know we have two councillors that are volunteer firefighters, Councillor Kitchen and Councillor Scott, and that Councillor Noonan has stated that he was formerly a volunteer firefighter. So that ratepayers are fully informed, what brigade does Councillor Southwell belong to? How long has he been a member of that fire brigade, and what training has he undertaken for the role of firefighter?
Mr. Hearn, it's clear that you have some sort of personal issue with me. This is clearly a vexatious question. You have a problem. You should come and talk to me about it, perhaps, rather than coming here every month and asking these offensive type of questions. What you're basically saying is you think I'm a liar. Why haven't you asked the same questions of the other people you say we all, I don't know who you're talking about, we all know these people are volunteer firefighters. Who's we all? Everybody in Western Australia? Who are you referring to?
Well, there was about 600 people outside of the last meeting.
And they all know, do they? You've asked them all personally what they know about who? Now, for example, you say Councillor Noonan has stated he is a former volunteer. Why haven't you stepped up tonight to ask him which brigade, how long was he a member, what training has he undertaken?
Well,
Why didn't you ask Councillor about Councillor Noonan?
I know because he's told me.
You could have asked me.
Well, I didn't. I'm just asking you.
No, you could have asked me before you come in here and try to make a vexatious allegation against me that I'm a liar. Well, my answer to your question is I'm not a liar. Thank you.
Okay.
Second question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Second question is that it would appear Logo Appointments was recently contracted to handle the process for the appointment of the CEO for the Shire of Capel Council. The most recent schedule of accounts paid indicates $4,892 was paid to Market Force for the CEO vacancy advertisement. What additional costs have been incurred to date, paid to either Logo Appointments or for other advertisements for the process? Given what is on tonight's agenda, has Logo Appointments contract been terminated? If so, why?
I'll ask the acting CEO to respond.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Hearn. A few prepared statements here. $5,215 has been paid to Logo Appointments, with a further $6,737.81 invoiced and due to be paid this month. It is estimated that approximately $10,000 may be incurred in regards to advertising and various due diligence checks in the future months when the CEO position is re-advertised in accordance with the Council's earlier resolution. I can also add that Logo Appointments contract wasn't terminated, it just ended in accordance with the terms of that contract. Unfortunately, the Council wasn't in a position to make an appointment, and hence the recommendation from me last month to start another process to find the best possible person for the position of CEO.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Shall I continue? Others. Yes, I do. Recently, the Shire spent $34,443 on a noise expert witness to provide technical advice to the State Administrative Tribunal on the proposed asphalt plant in Jullora. What is the total cost to date in defending the Shire's decision to not support the proposal? And can you provide a brief comment on what advice the noise expert provided to the SAT on the noise problem?
The SAT hearing, I believe, was open to the public. Total cost to the Shire to defend the Council's decision to refuse the asphalt plant is so far $218,654.64. You have another question?
Oh, did you? The second part? Was there anything in the second part? Was can you provide a brief comment on what advice the noise expert witness provided to SAT on the noise problem? I mean, was he supportive or not supportive, or, you know?
No. Well, I'm not going to go indulge you in that. As I said, it was an open hearing. If you were interested, you could have gone along. This fourth question.
Okay, fourth question. Recently, Shire of Capel CEO, former Shire of Capel CEO Glenn Bowen requested the Shire to undertake a review of the Shire's differential rating system. Has a contract been let to undertake the review? If so, who was awarded the contract? What was the value of the contract? What were the major findings, and when will the results be made public?
More Australia, value of the contract 25,210. The report is still being considered, and the results will be made as public as soon as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Does anyone else have a question? Recording of the vote of all members present. Councillor Andrew moves, and I shall read it, that in accordance with section of 5.214 of the Local Government Act, the vote of all members present be recorded following each vote at the meeting of this council. I'll second it. All those in favour? That's carried, unanimous. Myself. Any applications for leave of absence? No. Disclosures of interest. I have a few. Councillor Kitchen discloses a proximity interest in item 14.1, the Program of Works Roads. Councillor Kitchen also discloses a proximity interest in 14.2, the Program of Works. Councillor Sciano discloses a proximity interest in 14.3, Paths and Trails. Councillor Kitchen declares an impartiality interest in 20.1, the Jalarup Bushfire Brigade membership, as does Councillor Scott. Any items to be discussed behind closed doors? Acting CEO? There may be. We don't know yet.
There may be, I don't know. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, confirmation of minutes. The Ordinary Council meeting of the 20th of January 2021. Do I have a mover? Councillor Andrew. Seconder? Councillor Noonan. Any discussion? Those in favour? Carried, unanimous. No announcement by person presiding without discussion. Any petitions, deputations or presentations?
I have received none, Mr. Chairman.
None this evening. Motions of which previous notice has been given. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I'll read motion that Council requests the Acting CEO be requested to prepare a report that A, invites, collates and summarises constructive submissions from the public, and B, researches current trends in local government in regard to best practice, and C, investigates a variety of appropriate team building opportunities in order to present a series of recommendations to the Council and to the Shire of Capel Bush Advisory Committee in relation to ways in which the Council, the Bushfire Advisory Board and the various Capel Shire volunteer fire brigades might improve the processes of decision making and operational procedures.
Seconder? Councillor Noonan. Councillor Mogg.
We have now received the confidential investigation report on the injury that occurred at the fire north of Boyanup on Sunday the 25th of October. I would like to extend my personal sympathy and best wishes for a complete recovery to the firefighter who was injured and to all others involved who have been disturbed by this event. The investigation report included a number of other attachments, such as the DFES Operations Directive 3.2 on incident control and the DFES Communications Centre incident log. I would like to thank the Manager of Human Resources and Executive Services, the previous Acting CEO and current Acting CEO, and staff for their diligence and wise counsel in investigating and preparing these documents. They give us a better but never complete understanding of the unfortunate events of that day and over the subsequent weeks. I would also like to acknowledge the tremendous dedication and hard work over many years of our volunteer firefighters. Your commitment to serving your community is truly commendable, and it is greatly appreciated. We as a council recognise your service and acknowledge our duty to do what we can to keep you well resourced, well trained, and well above all safe. We owe this duty to all our volunteer firefighters, past, present and future. Whenever there is an injury, as in any modern organisation, it is critical that it is thoroughly investigated so that we can learn lessons and take any sensible steps to prevent such an injury occurring again. This can be done in a constructive, non-confrontational way. Accidents do happen, mistakes can be made, but this process of review is an ultimate proof that we can act in good faith. This is the most important duty that all of us owe to our present and future generations of firefighters. It would most unfortunate if fear of recrimination and or litigation were to prevent clear and constructive feedback on incidents. Indeed, such an attitude may well condemn some future firefighters to suffering the same fate. This is not acceptable. As leaders in the community, it is our role to serve, to inspire, to solve problems, and to create more leaders. We need to rebuild trust, both within the volunteer bushfire brigade, between the brigades, the advisory board, and council staff and councillors. With this in mind, I ask for support for the above motion. And I would also like to personally acknowledge and thank Councillor Noonan for his help and contribution so that I'm able to present this motion on an idea of resolution for such a contentious issue. Thank you.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councillor Mogg, for bringing the motion to the council. I would also like to acknowledge your work that you have done within the community, not just with this motion, but the wider work that you do in the community, looking to bring people together, to understand and to value the tremendous opportunity, the gift that we have living here in Capel, in this great shire, and the recognition that we need to work together. Okay, we need to work together, that nobody gets left behind. You know. So thank you very much, Councillor Mogg, and I would like to commend the motion to the council.
Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion?
I'll just make comment.
Councillor Scott.
I'll make comment. 1 month ago, probably to the day, around the day, you've seen the support the volunteers put outside. That means they are united as a group of volunteers, firefighters and community members. They are united. The problem I see is inside these four walls, is where the problem started, and it seems to me now that the problem's still going to be carried on. So I think I won't be supporting the motion because of the way I feel about the united of the volleys outside, and I think and I feel, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, that the problem actually started with inside these four walls.
Councillor Clues. Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I will be speaking against the motion, but I do just want to say I think it's quite good that you have brought this motion to the table, Councillor Mogg. It's making us have a discussion publicly about how we do feel about our bushfire brigades and the processes around them. And I think that's a very important discussion to be had. But I do speak against the motion for quite a couple of reasons. It talks in there about best practice and going forward to review and how we might improve processes of decision making and operations in our bushfire brigades. Our bushfire service operates on the same procedures and standards that DFES does, and that is best practice. They are the head hazard management agency in our state, and a lot of career firefighters, ex-volunteers put into those procedures and processes. It is a lot of experience, knowledge. It's constantly reviewed. It's under extreme scrutiny because you cannot get it wrong. And that is the best practice. That is what our brigades need to follow. There's issues around deployments as soon as you start mucking around with those sorts of things, because we send, on occasion, some of our members do go to other local governments to help them when things get a bit out of control. Unfortunately, it does happen. We've had recently 2 brigades sent some members up to the fires in Perth the other week. If you are not on the same operating procedure as DFES, then your members cannot participate. So we need our people, our resources to be on the same level as the state so that we can contribute and ask for that same support when we need it, and hopefully we never do need it. Operational procedures, I don't know if anyone's actually looked at them. They are very hefty documents. They are long. As a firefighter myself, I still struggle to understand them. A lot of them don't really involve me as quite a low-ranking member, but for individuals like the FCO that sits on the table over there, or our emergency services coordinator, they need to be right across them. And to implement another set of standards or operating procedures at a local government level, it would be quite hard to resource that, in my opinion, and I don't think we have the resources to do such a thing. I think we need to just remain on those standard operating procedures which have come up from DFES. They do work, but a lot of the things here about community submissions and working as a team, we don't need another report that tells us to do that. We have the top level document that this Shire endorses that tells us to do that, our strategic community plan. In there it says we need to create a more connecting community. In there it says that council needs to work in partnership with the community, and that community can be our bushfire brigades. It's already telling us what we need to do. We don't need another report that just tells us the exact same thing. About what council can do to better support our bushfire brigades and the BFAC, Councillor Mogg has said it in here. We as a council recognise your service and recognise our duty as a council to do what we can to keep you well resourced, well trained, and above all safe. That is what the bushfire brigades expect, and that is what they want. They don't want to sit around tables and discuss relevant issues. If there's an issue, they'll bring that to us. That's what the BFAC's for. Whatever happened a couple of months ago would have been reviewed by the BFAC. It has its own processes. So that's what myself as a volunteer, but all the other volunteers want. They just want council to back it up, whether it's going to the little scrub fire that we had last night down the end of the highway here, whether it's going up to Harvey to help them out. We just want to make sure we've got the backing and the resources. That's all we expect. So I do thank you, Councillor, for bringing this motion, but unfortunately I can't support it because I think we do have the appropriate operating procedures and we do have things in place that tell us what we need to do to resource our volunteer bushfire brigades.
Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councillor Kitchen. I was struggling with a few words when my name was called earlier, but I think your sentiment is exactly what I was thinking. I appreciate Councillor Mogg bringing this to the table. I can understand, I think, that the bones of it is that Councillor Mogg wishes to quite correctly improve the relationship between the council and BFAC and the brigades, and of course that's something we need to do clearly. But like Doug's mentioned, our job here is strategic. It seems every month we're doing something that's looking like a micromanagement of a department, and I just don't think that's our place. We have the strategic community plan. After a brief view of it, I think it probably could do with a look at. There's some key words like continual improvement that could probably be added in if we wanted to look at something like that. But that's how we operate as a council, as showing leadership. It's by looking at that high-level stuff and strategically operating broadly, not micromanaging individual sections of the Shire or a volunteer group or anything like that. So, yeah, I agree. I thank Councillor Mogg very much. I appreciate what she's trying to do here, but I think this isn't really our place.
Any other speakers for or against the motion? I'll speak in support of the motion. I'm at a loss to understand why we wouldn't support a motion that would look at examining how we might improve part of our role. Councillor Clues mentioned continual improvement. And I think some of the context behind the statements that have been made against the motion have come from a position of where we're supposed to accept that in this particular sphere of our community, the bushfire brigades, everything is always perfect and should never be questioned. I can't think of anything that couldn't be perhaps improved over time. Things change over time, and I don't think there's any part of the things which we as a council are responsible for management and supervision that should be considered sacrosanct, untouchable, perfect, and not capable of any improvement. All this motion seeks to do is to ask for people if they think there's anything that could be improved, and I'm sure if at the end of the examination the result was the report said no, everything is absolutely as good as it could be, well, we'd accept that report. But unless we look at it, what we're saying is there are areas that we're responsible for that that can't be looked at because they're somehow beyond reproach or somehow beyond scrutiny. I don't accept that. I don't accept that. No one's perfect. Nothing is perfect, and nothing is exempt from scrutiny, as far as I'm concerned. So I think it's a very good motion, and I'd support it. If there's no one else, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's lost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3. Councillor Scott, you want to move the motion?
Sorry. Yeah, move the motion that we donate $700 to the Lord Mayor's Appeal distress fund for the victims of the Wirraloo bushfires.
Councillor Mogg, seconded. Any speakers for or against? If not, we'll put it to the vote.
Can I just make comment?
Oh, sorry. Yes, you may.
Why I've chosen the Lord Mayor's Appeal is every dollar that's spent there goes on the ground. If you go to some of the other charities, that only half gets out into the paddock, the rest goes to someone else's pocket to doing it. This is all done voluntarily. Is it administered? I did ask the acting CEO, who asked a question of the finance department, how much money without going over budget, and there was $700 there, so that's what we went with.
Thank you. If there's Councillor Clues,
Question, if I can, through the chair.
you may.
Could someone clarify exactly where this money will go, what it will be used on?
Acting CEO, I don't know. Councillor Scott perhaps can assist.
It's put, it goes to Lord Mayor's appeal. There is an independent, I think there is 3 independent persons. I may be wrong, there might be less or more. 3 independents that actually allocate the money to people that apply for hardship. It's allocated. So consequently, every dollar that's put in there, every dollar goes to the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Thank you, Chair.
I think we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any questions of which previous notice has been given? No. Chief Executive reports. The local government elections. Do I have a mover of the officer recommendation? Councillor Kitchen, seconded Councillor Andrew. Councillor Kitchen, do you want to move it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Moved as read in the officer's recommendation.
Is there any other discussion? Councillor Andrew? No? We can put that to the vote. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. (13.2) Cardinals Junior Football Club lease. Boyne Up Memorial Park club rooms. Do I have a mover? Councillor Sciano, seconded Councillor Clues. Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This is just the continuation of an existing lease.
Nobody else? We can put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. 13.3 Code of Conduct for Council Members, Committee Members and Candidates. Do we have a Councillor Mogg? Any second? Councillor Mogg, would you like to move it?
Yes, happy to move as read.
Seconded by Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Mogg.
No further to say.
Well, I'd like to move an amendment, and that is that at point 3, it says those persons occupying the positions of Chief Executive Officer and, I'd like to remove the words, and Strategic Governance and Risk Coordinator. So it would read, the person occupying the position of Chief Executive, or just say Chief Executive Officer, be authorised to receive complaints and withdraw complaints in accordance to Clause 11.3 of the Local Government Model Code of Conduct Regulations 2021. Would I have a seconder? Councillor Clues, thank you. My reason for moving the amendment is that I don't think it's necessary for there to be. I really don't expect a flood of complaints. I hope not, anyway. And I don't think it's necessary for anyone other than the Chief Executive Officer to receive the complaints and deal with them. I'm not sure why that was in there. I just think it'd be much more straightforward, and I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was just the Chief Executive Officer. Anyone else? Councillor Clues?
A question, please, if I may, through the chair. Maybe we could get a brief thought from the CEO, acting CEO, on that amendment.
Acting CEO, do you have any anything?
Mr. Chairman, no, I've got no comment.
Thank you.
Councillor Sciano.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Look, I'm not overly fussed about if there is one person. I guess my question just is, in the occasion that the CEO is unable in some circumstance, you know, you would think that the fallback could potentially be on a second officer. What would be the process if the CEO was unable to take a complaint? President, question through the chair.
Well, my initial response to your question is that, I don't think these things have any great time sensitivity. So if the CEO or acting CEO was on leave or something, I'm sure that the processing of a complaint wouldn't be something that had to be done overnight. And what was the second part of the question?
That was the question.
Yeah. So I don't see that. I'll ask the chief acting CEO if he has anything to add, but I don't see. That's my point. In answer to your question, my point is that there isn't any urgency that would require something to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In cases of illness, if the CEO wasn't available, the time limit is fine. If the CEO were to be away for a longer period, in the normal course of circumstances, an acting CEO is appointed, and this would take care of the acting CEO as well.
Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question through you. Continuing along the same sort of theme, if the CEO, as the complaint officer, was put forward with a situation where there would be an impartiality and an independent officer separate is needed for that, is that allowable through the regs? Because that would be my understanding as why a second person is authorised. In case there is a complaint against perhaps an executive officer, the close relationship the CEO has with them might make the CEO not exactly ideal to deal with that complaint.
Acting CEO, anything?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Mr. President. To be perfectly frank, I don't ever see that as being a problem with the CEO. The CEO is in fact the only appointee of the council. Everybody else is an appointment of the CEO. So there's that separation, and I really don't see that would become an issue. If it did become an issue, you've probably got a problem with the appointment.
Okay. Anyone else? Before we put that, we can put that to the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? I think that's carried 6-2. Is that right? No? Hey? Against? Were you? Oh, you were for. We'll do it again. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried 7-1. That becomes a substantive motion. Anyone else like to speak for or against that motion? Councillor Sciano.
Yeah, I just want to raise some comments. I have no objections to the code of conduct. It very much continues to outline the behaviour that's expected within the Local Government Act and the rules of conduct. I really see this. I'm interested to see how this goes, turning into election in 2021. I think this is the first time in local government history that this code of conduct's also been put upon candidates as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how that is managed. And it has its pros and its cons. You know, necessarily, sometimes candidates have had to some degree, within the means of the law, free rein to criticise council and decisions. And this potentially, now being imposed on candidates, could take away non-sitting members the ability to make those comments without retribution of complaint. So I obviously think a lot of our candidates are hopefully going to be respectful and focus on their positives much rather than other people's negatives. From my campaign experience, that's the best way to go anyway. So I'm hoping it doesn't quite become an issue, but I think this will be groundbreaking in terms of how local government elections are going to look into the future.
Thank you. Without any further comment, I think we can put that to the vote then. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. 13.4, the CEO Selection Committee review. Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation? No mover. Yep. Councillor Noonan, seconded. Councillor Kitchen.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I just ask if that's the recommendation that was distributed in the agenda or the recommendation that was distributed earlier?
Well, the mover,
One on the...
Councillor Noonan, is that up on the... Councillor Noonan, for the sake of clarity, would you like to read it out?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. Move the motion that the CEO Selection Committee be reconstituted under section 5.92D to enable the appointment of one other person. 2. Councillor representation on the committee be confirmed as Councillors Kitchen, Mogg, Andrew and Ciano. 3. The adopted duties of the committee shall remain unchanged. 4. Pursuant to section 539B(2) of the Local Government Act 1995, adopt the new model standards for Chief Executive Officer recruitment, performance and termination as detailed in Attachment 1. 5. Committee membership be amended to number 5. 6. That Mr. Giovanni John Mario Castrilli, OAM, be appointed to the committee as an independent member. And 7. Pursuant to Section 2, Clause 5(2) of the Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996, approve the job description and selection criteria for the recruitment of a CEO as previously developed by the CEO Recruitment Committee in November 2020, as detailed in Attachment 2.
Thank you. I would like to just put a procedural motion that this motion be deferred to a special meeting of council to be held prior to the AGM on March the 3rd at the Dalyellop Community Centre beginning at 5:30 p.m. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Clues. Anyone wishing to speak to it? No? I'd like to put that to the vote then, that procedural motion that it be deferred. Those in favour? Those against? It's lost. Those against? 5-3. So we get on with it now. So the mover was Councillor Noonan. Do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we need a new CEO. This motion is about, to explain to the gallery, this motion is about a change in legislation that occurred at the start of this year, which requires an outside or an independent person to also be added to any selection committee or panel. We had appointed a selection committee. The new legislation refers to a selection panel, and there is still some 6s and 7s within the department itself as to whether the committee and the panel are the same thing, or and that's the reason for some of the confusion or consternation in regard to this, how this committee / panel is constituted. However, we have to have it. We will get there. We will get a recommendation to appoint a new CEO, and this is the way that it happens. So I'd like to commend the motion to the council.
Councillor Kitchen. The only reason I sought to defer the motion, and I'm probably not going to support the motion, is because I'm actually not sure, because this is new legislation, and I'm not sure that this the resolution complies 100% with all of the requirements of the new legislation and that's the reason why I sought an adjournment. And so I can't support it in its present form because I don't have confidence that it is that it does the job without causing other things we may have to attend to. Anyway, Councillor Sciano.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The committee met earlier today, obviously to endorse unanimously Mr. John Castrilli. I think it goes without saying many are aware of his achievements and his role in the local government and state government sector over many decades since the early 90s. So very glad to see his appointment to the committee as an independent member, and I think his input will be invaluable. I think some of the concerns regarding the recent changes to the regulations. Our understanding and advice as well also is that is not retrospective. The committee had been formed, in some time before the regulations came to be. The motion itself also goes in good faith to endorse as many of the new regulations as possible, including the model standards for the Chief Executive Officer recruitment. I think, and I'm very, very excited and looking forward to the vision that the committee has for what a CEO could potentially bring, a new CEO could bring to the Shire of Capel, and the future vision that they may have and that we may have for that person's role. So I look for Councillor support for the recommendation tonight.
Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question. Pardon me. We were handed this this motion only just prior to this meeting. I'm wondering if this shouldn't have come in as a late item.
Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The original intention was to have a late item as a result of the CEO selection committee held this afternoon. However, once I had a look at the committee's recommendation, I formed the opinion that the matter that was already before the council, that we're considering now at item 13.4, could have been easily handled through a number of amendments, or, as all councillors are aware, if an alternative motion is proposed other than the original officer's motion, the council has every right to do that. We'll just record a reason for change in the minutes. So perfectly acceptable as far as the Local Government Act is concerned and the local government admin regulations.
Councillor Clues, you have another question, or you want to make a speak for or against the motion?
Against, if I may. Thank you. Yeah, I think this motion we're looking at is substantially different to the one that was advertised. I think that being the case, I see this in my mind as a late item. I've been stung a bit on late items lately, and I'm not prepared to agree to vote for anything without the time for me to do due diligence of looking at the item.
Anyone else like to speak for or against? I'll just ask one more question that arose from something Councillor Sciano said. He said that we could carry on because the new legislation wasn't retrospective. If it's not retrospective, why are we adding a outside member which is part of the provisions of the new legislation? Why are we adding another member?
So, Mr. Chairman, there could be a matter of interpretation here. The council appointed the CEO selection committee at its meeting held last month, but the actual process for the selection of a new CEO had not yet started. The new regulations were promulgated on 3 February of this year, and I have formed the opinion that as the CEO selection process had not begun, since this is a mandatory process anyway, and the new model would have, the model code would apply in any case from promulgation, that the better course of action was to take the least risk and not only be required to do the whole process in accordance with the model. We had already done some of it anyway because the department was requiring us to get an independent person involved. So, as I've said earlier, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You need to take the whole lot. It's a least risk course of action, in my opinion, such that the process cannot be questioned at a later stage.
Thank you. We'll put that to the vote then. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 6-2. Program of works for roads 2021 to 2031. Do we have a mover? Councillor Andrew, seconded. Councillor Noonan. Councillor Andrew. Councillor Noonan. Discussion for or against? No. We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried 8. And we'll have Councillor 7. Sorry, 7. 7-0. Councillor Kitchen. Are they consecutive? Okay. Hang on, I'll just get to it. What are we at? 14.5? 14.2, 14.3, sorry. 14.2 we've just done. Okay, 14.2 car parks. Okay. Do we have a mover? Yes. Yes. No, don't get him because he has. He's declared.
Oh, for this one too?
Yeah. Councillor, I think it was moved. Councillor Andrew, do I have a second to Councillor Noonan? Anyone, any discussion? Those in favour?
Oh, sorry, Kieran.
Oh, Kieran, Mr Noonan. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to just make the point that these are very, very detailed, very, very well prepared programs of work, and it's a tremendous amount of work that should be acknowledged particularly from the Manager of Technical Services, Kristen McKechnie. So I'd just like to make that that acknowledgement for all of his hard work and for the work of the other people working for him or with him, preparing all of these documents for us, and the thoroughness that they have in their work.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, we can put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried 7-0. 14.3, the paths and trails. Yes. We'll wait for Councillor Kitchen. Okay, do I have a mover for 14.3? Councillor Andrew, seconded Councillor Noonan. Councillor Andrew? Councillor Noonan?
Once again, I'd like to thank our Engineering Technical Officer for preparing this, and I'd like to also just point out that on page 49, I'm very, very pleased to see the inclusion of the recognition that that this positions us for staging larger strategic network links, such as the Bunbury to Bustleton cycling link, the Capel to Peppermint Grove cycle link, and the Capel to Boynup connection. So it's great that our technical officers are putting those programs in, or putting those aspirations in that we have expressed as a council, and that's very, very much appreciated.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to pass on my thanks to the Manager of Technical Services as well. He's certainly got a interesting job. We've over the next 10 years, our sustainability ratio for paths is still only 0.49%, which is well below where we need to be, but it is recognised through our overall asset strategy, and then that, as Councillor Noonan has mentioned, those future projects. But then on that same page, there's also the assets coming up in Dalyellup with the big wave in there, and that's recognised, and it certainly shows that we do need to be forward planning and increasing that budget. Otherwise, we are going to have a whole heap of network come up at the same time and very little resource. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else? We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried 7-0. Yes. We move to 14.4, the Program of Works for Drainage. Do I have a mover? Councillor Andrew. And seconded Councillor Kitchen. Any discussion? No. Councillor Kitchen, do you have your hand up? Or are you just scratching your forehead?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, drains are actually one of my favourite, because for a while it was the only thing I could vote on. I had too many proximity interests there for a while. So yeah, quite a good program. Obviously all just renewals. There's no new assets in there. But that's still another one where we've got to work on that sustainability ratio. We're a bit behind on that one.
Anyone else? No, I'd just like to add to that these programs of works are going into the draft budget. So if between now and adoption of the budget, anybody in the community has any feedback for us, or any concerns or any suggestions, they should let us know, and we will of course be giving these things more consideration as we go through the budget in detail before we make a decision on whether to push the button on it. Okay, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? No? Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Figure 14.5, the Extractive Industry Licence for Lot 102 Goodwood Road, Capel. Anybody interested in moving? Councillor Kitchen, seconded. I'll second it. Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the officer's recommendation as contained in the report. I'm quite satisfied in the conditions and advice notes attached to it that this extractive industry will be compliant. It is growth on their existing site that they've got there, so we know that this operator has complied and is doing well. I'm particularly happy with the requirements around groundwater and the stormwater management, and they've got to keep well away from our groundwater resource, and I'm quite satisfied that that will be managed and inspected.
Anyone else? Councillor Clues.
Question, if I may, through the chair. I just noticed some members of the public turning around to view this item. Is there a reason the television at the back, at the front of the room isn't being used tonight?
Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Councillor Clues, I'm glad you raised that, because I wanted to let members of the public know who are getting sore necks that the TV actually works, but the connection in the ceiling cavity doesn't work, and we're trying to find a technician, I understand, who is small enough to get in there. There's some funny convoluted pathways up there, and it's preventing us from getting getting it fixed. I did promise Councillor Southwell last month that it'd be fixed this month, but I failed.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other discussion for or against? We can put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those in favour, can you indicate, please? That's carried unanimously. We move to
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, just one. In that one, it's just been brought to my attention that there's a small typo in Part 1A that should, on your printed copies, that says January. It should be February. There's no need for an amendment or anything. We'll just treat it as a typo as long as everybody's aware that when you get your minutes, that 24 January will read 24 February. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you.
14.6, the Bunbury Geograph Sub-Regional Strategy, our submission. Anybody? Councillor Sciano? Councillor Kitchen? Councillor Sciano?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm actually quite proud of our submission as a Shire. I think it raises a lot of the concerns and strategic visions that many councillors have had over the past couple of years. Very glad to see staff include council's position on many projects, including the importance of the basalt resource. I'm definitely very impressed to see the provision and principal support for fast passenger rail in the southwest. I'd love to tell the story of just how much of a difference that would make to people's lives, and particularly people my age and a little younger, if you were able to travel to Perth within an hour and a half and you could study at many of the universities in Perth and provide options for education and training. I think, and to see us go the step further and to encourage that development to continue through our own Shire and connect people to the Busselton Margaret River Airport is a fantastic vision to have. So I think the submission that's been put to us today is a great show of strength and vision for the Shire of Capel, and I definitely commend the submission and look for fellow councillors' support.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to endorse the sentiments of Councillor Sciano. It is a very, very good report, comprehensive report. However, I'd point out that, and I'd also like to thank Mr. Wansborough for his preparation, the Senior Planning Officer Strategic for his preparation of the documents and the council's response, which does include the important items that council has raised. The one thing I would point out is that the documents which have come from the Bunbury Geograph group is that on map 10, which deals with the basic raw materials, it indicates locations of clay, gravel, limestone and sand. However, it doesn't indicate the location of basalt and granite resources, which were both included in the previous West Australian Planning Commission Bunbury Greater Regional Planning Scheme maps, and that those resources should be included because they are of strategic regional strategic importance. So if we could feed that back to them, that would be great.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I concur with the comments by Councillor Sciano and Noonan. I suppose I quite like that the caution has been expressed for the aspirational target population of 300,000, which hasn't been clearly articulated how that's going to be achieved, because that would be quite a significant amount of urban infill or new subdivision to come along, and the manager also adequately raises the other issue of where is the water going to come from. Water is new gold, And we need to make sure that that resource is protected as much as we can on our own local level, because we do have parks to water and a few other things like that. So we need to look at how we can probably recycle water a bit better, but that's probably not related to this strategy. But you know, I'm quite glad to see that the officer has raised concerns like that.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we can put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Now, 14.7. Darbalone Vista Basketball Ring and Shade Sale Investigation. Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Noonan. Seconded, Councillor Mogg. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move the officer's recommendation that, number one, the backboard and basketball ring at Darbalone Vista public open space be removed, and two, the remaining concrete pad be used for a gazebo and picnic table area at a minimum estimated cost of $21,081, excluding GST. And three, the cost in point 2 above be referred to or in the 2021-22 draft budget.
And that's been seconded, Councillor Mogg. So, Councillor Noonan, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the result of a good investigation by the Manager of Operations. It looks at the part of the recommendation looks at the risk factor for the council when officers went out to actually listen to the site, to go to the site, and I know the acting CEO has also been out there, which is tremendous support from the acting CEO in taking up or investigating this particular issue for some of our concerned ratepayers. The noise from the pad is really quite extraordinary. I've been there and I've been in the house of the residents, some of the residents who've complained about this facility. It's not just the noise, it's the vibration that you feel. And it was the comment from the technical officers who went out there. They said, look, that you don't even need to get the noise monitors or investigation, the recording equipment out, because they could tell. You can just tell that it's going to be way over. Now, it might be a normal or an acceptable thing between the hours of, 8 o'clock in the morning through till 6 o'clock at night. However, beyond 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's not a reasonable thing for people to have to experience the noise and the vibration. There's a precedent, as you know, at the town of Cambridge or Subiaco, where a similar situation occurred and the council did the same thing, was in a position where it had to remove the item. The point's made that we should be providing outdoor recreation facilities for our kids. Absolutely, we should. And there are in Dalyella a number of recreational facilities. In fact, there are 2 other basketball courts. And it says within a 20-minute walking distance from, well, it would be a 20-minute sauntering distance, because it's only 1.2 kilometres away. If you're really keen to play basketball, you could jog there in, you could walk there briskly in 10 minutes, you could jog there in 5 minutes, and if you were running, I reckon, or if you had a bike, you'd get there in 3 minutes. So it's not as though by removing this particular facility that we are drastically disadvantaging a vast region of So, I think it is very important that we do provide outdoor recreation facilities, and it's important that we cater for the needs of all of the community. Another point that was made was that this particular park is used extensively by parents and little kids, because the playground that's there, that they are in fact the main users of this particular park. And that providing the gazebo, picnic area would be a very, very welcome addition to the amenity of that park for them. And the park is also used very, very regularly by a gentleman who has a disability. There's a disability swing there, and so it's great that that facility is there, and I think it speaks to the fact that the people who brought this concern about the basketball ring are reasonable, and their request is reasonable, because even though the swing actually makes noise as well, probably just needs a can of oil, they're very happy with that, and with the kids, the parents, the kids, all of that sort of stuff. So they welcome the use of the park. It's just that this particular aspect of it, the basketball, the vibration, the sound, is really is untenable. We have a good solution which has been prepared by our Manager of Operations, so I'd like to endorse that to the Council.
Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I support this motion, and I also commend the officer's recommendation. Although I'm in favour of that facility, and if it's getting used by the youth, and the youth of those hours of the day, night, with their vehicles, and the repercussions of removing it will have, is it possible to add an amendment to the motion?
You may move an amendment. Yes.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
That we request the CEO to look into a more appropriate location that offers car parking and away from residential. Perhaps a suggestion. Sorry.
Wait a minute, Councillor Mogg. Slow down, and so we can get it. We can get the wording down.
Request the CEO to investigate an appropriate location for a basketball hoop ring. So an alternative, thank you. To accommodate the users.
Would we have a seconder for that amendment, Councillor Clues? We have a seconder. So, Councillor Mogg, while they get that down, you can speak to the amendment if you like.
Thank you, President. I think each incident has its own merit and should be investigated as is. And you could say that removing this, you have to do it for all residents or concerns for the community. So hoping that this amendment will address the repercussions of removing this facility, because I support the youth and the youth within our teen range, especially if they've got their driver's licence and are operational or using our community and resources of all times of the day. But yeah, so I ask for council support.
Okay, do I have anyone else? Councillor Clues.
Thank you. Actually, this is already provided as an option in the original report to relocate the basketball half court to the car park at the western end of Dahlia Boulevard. I think the CEO has already done this investigation, and that's the option. So I'll be speaking against the item. So I'm speaking against the amendment.
Yeah, Councillor Clues, that's okay. That's in the background, but it's not part of the recommended resolution.
I understand.
That's the issue.
So my understanding is that if that was the desired action, then the appropriate amendment would be to put that option into the amendment. The current amendment to ask for an investigation, I speak against because I believe it's already been done.
Okay, so yep, and you're welcome to move an alternative amendment if this one fails. Councillor Sciano.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Clues was saying. From my view, if we were to move forward with that particular option, and I won't be supporting the amendment because I think that the motion needs to fail and that should come back as a foreshadowed recommendation, potentially to endorse option 2. At the moment, the business is dealing with option 3. But so for that reason, I won't support the amendment.
Excuse me, President. Can I remove the amendment?
Councillor Mogg, I think you can withdraw your amendment with the consent of the seconder, who was Councillor Clues. So you have his consent. So that amendment is withdrawn. Do we have anyone wishing to put another amendment? No? So we'll return to debating the substantive motion. Councillor Sciano.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm greatly concerned about the precedent that we set if we are to start budgeting $20,000 odd and above every time we get a single complaint from a resident about an asset that has been there for a little while, or for a while. My question through the chair is actually to ask whether or not anyone who was using the courts had been approached and asked or requested at any point to perhaps not use the courts during what would be considered inappropriate times of the day.
Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that I'm correcting this in that we asked our rangers to do various patrols out there early in the morning and late in the evening, but I understand, unless something happened last time I spoke with the rangers, I understand that the rangers didn't actually find anybody playing basketball early or late, so they didn't have the opportunity to, say, do something else. In fact, what happened is they found people walking dogs without leads and and took other action.
Cool. If I could continue.
So you can continue with your remarks, yes, please.
Yeah. Look, I don't think this is an ideal option, and I'm not dismissing the complaint of the resident. I would probably be very much in the same situation if I was awoken at 5 a.m. every morning by that bang on the ground. In fact, I've got neighbours that like to play music a couple of hours later than that, and that's annoying enough as it is. However, I feel like this is probably a last resort option. And this is just a general statement, but I don't think there is high usage of our facilities, particularly before the sun rises. So I would be very interesting to know who that person or in those people are who are using the facilities at what is actually quite an unrealistic time or unexpected time, and an investigation to have actually been done into who they are. Have they been approached? Could this be something that could be dealt with by a quick discussion? Have we discussed? Or we may discover that we don't know who's using it, and there could be, a large group of people using it here, now, and everywhere, every time of the night and day. But we don't know that because we haven't actually done that study. I actually think if we did want to continue with the concerns of the resident and take action to alleviate their concerns immediately, spending over $21,000 next year is, I don't think, an appropriate use to do so. Use of that money. I just simply would say remove the basketball ring altogether. Alternatively, I'm interested to know from an engineering perspective if there's any alternative surfaces that can be used for such a court. It's obviously concrete, that's a very hard surface, and the noise rebounds off the surface. There are potentially alternative surfaces that can be used. It's a small patch of area? Could it be resealed with something different? And would that ultimately arrest some of the noise that's coming from the court and allow everyone to win, I guess? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. President. I concur with Councillor Sciano. Resurfacing the half court wasn't something that was provided to us as an option in the background information. I believe that the complaints are stemming from one resident regarding inappropriate noise, light or parking complaints, which I actually feel is the responsibility of the police and the police's jurisdiction to monitor any antisocial behaviour or anything that's outside of the legislation. It's not our responsibility. So that, coupled with not only the cost but the fact that the overwhelming majority of residents that were approached actually indicated that they had no issue with the facility and wish for it to remain, I can't support this motion either, or the recommendation either.
Anyone else wishing? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. Question first, if I may. Through the Chair, can someone explain why the cost is quoted as a minimum cost, or an estimated minimum cost?
Acting CEO.
What's the maximum?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I really don't know the answer to that question. I don't know whether Ms. Maharaj knows that or Jeremy knows that.
We have put an estimate, just a rough estimate, on how the gazebos have been done previously. We have not got a confirmed estimate. It's minimum, the cheapest option. There might be other costs involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Clues, back to your remarks.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously that's a concern. Seeing something there with a no limit on the maximum spend is a bit of a concern. But even without that, I wouldn't be supporting the motion. We've actually had complaints about this basketball hoop in the past, and it was removed. When it was removed, we got dozens of complaints and demands that it be returned. So it got returned. I'm astonished that we're now looking again at pulling it down. And for me, the fact that the use of this facility during the day isn't a problem. The actual problem is illegal activity. The actual problem is cars parking in the park on the grass where they're not allowed to be, to use their headlights, because there's no lighting facilities here in the night. So if you've got people driving into our parks and playing basketball, making noise at times of night that is absolutely against the local laws. For me, this is clearly a local law issue, and perhaps a ranger or even police issue to sort out. For me, I come back to the complaints about the rubbish on the beach. I think it's a similar thing. You know, for every one person that's throwing rubbish on the beach in town, there's 10 people going down there cleaning it up. We're not going to close the beaches because of this one person that's doing the wrong thing, and I don't think we should be removing a basketball hoop. We should best manage the issue that we've got in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Clues. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? If not, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? So it's lost 6-2. 14.8, I think it is, public memorials and plaques. Now there's quite a lot of material here. So the officer recommendation, as read, would anyone like to move it? Councillor Kitchen, seconded Councillor Andrew. Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and yeah, I'll move the motion as read in the agenda. I won't read it out. I suppose it's a policy that needed to be developed, and there's certainly sensitivity issues around certain parts of it, namely roadside memorials. I think the acting director has conducted this in quite a professional and respectful manner, and that's the impression that I got today with the discussion with her about it. And I think that's also come through from your staff. So I'm quite happy to support the recommendation.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. President. I support the recommendation as well, but I just had a couple of questions through the chair, if I could.
You may.
Okay, so will residents that get approval to erect the memorials receive notification prior to removal, or the council using their discretion to alter them? The 12-month limit that's listed, is there an opportunity for extension? What happens to memorials which appear without approval? How do you track down who's put them in and make contact with them? And there's no, sorry,
We'll
I can see your finger on the thing.
We'll go with 3 at a time, because
Okay.
otherwise might lose track. So, Acting CEO.
That's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little bit of background. The administration gets regular requests for plaques, memorials and the like in what is otherwise known as council property. When I received one of them, I said, oh look, show me the council policy so I know how to proceed with this. There was no policy, so that's the basis of this. But the idea is that from now on, any application will be recorded in a register, so that we know how long it's supposed to be there, we know who put it there. So the idea then is, if anything is going to happen to that, we've got the group or the individual that sought the original permission, and then we can get in touch with them and advise them accordingly on what is proposed to happen. And the policy reserves the right for the council to have the final decision because it's on their land. If it come into disrepair and we know whose it is, we can go, hey, why don't you fix that? Or we'll take it out. So it's just a control mechanism to make sure, one, we know what's being put on council property from an insurance point of view, a liability point of view, and that we can get in touch with the people who originally put it in if we want to take it out, or if maintenance or it's being destroyed or vandalised or something like that.
Okay, so they will receive notification?
Yes.
Is there an opportunity to revisit the 12-month time limit?
Yes.
Yep, that'll be able. What's going to happen to the existing memorials? Because you've just said about the register going forward. I've lived here many years, and for example, the memorial that's in the middle of the highway at the end of Hastings Road, that's been there for as long as I can remember. So something like that that's clearly been there a long time, how are you going to locate who actually placed that there?
Mr. Chairman, that's almost impossible if it goes back a long way. I understand that the placement of memorials in the past has been on somewhat of an ad hoc nature. So if we don't have the information, there will be some inquiries. But if we can't find the person, it's not something that we're going to spend a lot of time on. But of course, in the first instance, a lot of memorials have a name on them that we would pursue.
So I appreciate that. So are you just going to remove them?
In every case where we can find the person, we will contact the person or the group.
Okay. And so my final question was that there's no fee listed for the application in this policy. So there is no fee for the application?
Nothing planned, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Fabulous. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew, do you have any further remarks on the issue?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else for Councillor Clues?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, if I may. This doesn't include main roads, road reserves, I assume? No, thank you.
No. Okay, we can put that to the vote then. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We're now moving to private pet havens. And do I have a mover, Councillor Clues? Seconded, Councillor Sciano. Councillor Clues.
Just move as recorded in the agenda.
Councillor Sciano, anything? Anyone else wishing to speak on this motion? No? We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The Dalyalup Skate Park, 15% design approval to progress to final design. I'll move it. Seconded Councillor Clues. Quick on the draw. So nothing from me, Councillor Clues. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against?
I actually just want to speak to say I wasn't going to speak on this one.
I haven't given you the call yet. I didn't see anyone's hand. Is there anyone? No. Councillor Sciano.
I was only going to speak and not move it, just to give the council a break from the usual spill on the skate park. So I'm not going to continue this discussion tonight, and recommend the officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Thank you. We're all very appreciative. Anyone else? No, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. I think we're at 14.11, endorsement of the land exchange agreement for Lot 1 and Lot 2, Goodwood Road, Capel. Councillor Andrew, I saw your hand. Seconded Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Andrew.
Thanks, Mr. President. I don't have anything to add really, other than the fact that I'll move it as read. I think this is just a great solution.
Councillor Kitchen. Anyone else? We'll vote on it. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 15.1, the mid-year budget review. Do we have a mover? Councillor Sciano, seconded Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have particularly too much to say on this, because the report itself, I think, has been formatted fantastically in the way that it identifies substantial differences in each of the categories throughout the budget. I think it's very descriptive, and it goes through and explains it very well. We're in a very interesting financial position after COVID and so on, particularly around the grants that have been provided, particularly for Ramsey Road, and obviously the skate park not yet being completed in this financial year has had a big impact on what the mid-year budget review looks like. But as for the actual the report that's in front of us and the review that's been done is very thorough, and I'm very appreciative of the way that it's been done, and I don't have particularly much more to add to that. I might see how discussion goes and potentially add some things at right of reply.
Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I concur with the comments of Councillor Sciano. Quite an interesting report put forward by the Director and her team. Been quite a lot of work in that one. I suppose it's quite clearly explained through this agenda item, but also in the monthly financials, exactly what has happened, the timing issues and other. It's quite clearly what has happened to the budget as a result of COVID and various other grants coming through and projects being delayed.
Anyone else for or against? So I went through the mid-year review, and what I gathered from my reading of it was that we're in a better position. We're in quite a good financial position, in a better than expected financial position. I don't know whether the effect of COVID causing things not to happen and shutdowns, etc., caused that. But it is interesting that in a year that we ventured into the uncharted territory of zero rates increase, and that we dipped into reserves to boost our community organisations and sporting groups and give those grants, one-off grants away, that we to the tune of about $150,000. That notwithstanding those two things, we have emerged in a better than expected financial position, and I think it's very pleasing. And we need to obviously feed that into our discussions regarding the forthcoming budget. So unless Councillor Sciano wants to reply, we can put that to the vote to accept that report. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 15.2 is proposal to construct the pump track, the BMX track at Peppermint Grove Beach. Councillor Clues in moving. Councillor Andrew seconding. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move it as read, but move a procedural motion to defer this to the next ordinary council meeting to allow time to, well, I don't need to speak to the reasoning, do I?
Okay, yep, just move it. And a seconder. I'll second it. Your reasons?
Thank you. I think there's a bit of conjecture for me about the some complaints and some community feedback about this park. There seems to be more people not happy about it than I would have thought there would be, and I would like time to really hear more from the staff and potentially get more feedback from that community and particularly the nearby residents, how they're going to feel about having this track here. You know, we just looked at a motion that staff recommended to remove a basketball hoop for a complaint of a resident, and then minutes later we're looking at putting in an item that has clearly reported local resident disapproval of the project. So I think this is something we ought to have a bit better of a look at before addressing.
Okay, nothing further from me. Any other discussion on the amendment? Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I don't support a deferral of the item. I think, as the report states, the landowners in proximity of the proposed construction have been consulted. On page 122, it breaks down that 9 out of the 13 were fully supportive, 2 had queries, and another 2 strongly opposed the proposal. It'd been made aware to, I think some councillors may have asked the question out of session, that one of those who opposed actually didn't live at all in proximity to the site. But I'm confident that the staff have done have consulted those in proximity to the site, and so I think that I feel that we are prepared to be able to debate the fate of the pump track.
Anyone else wishing to speak in terms of the amendment? No? Well, we'll put that amendment to the vote then. Those in favour? Those against? The amendment's lost, 7-1. We return to the substantive motion. Do I have a speaker for that one? Councillor Clues, you're indicating?
Thank you, yes. Yeah, as I've already said, I can't support it. I'm not happy with the discontent about it, and that I'm not convinced that those residents that showed issue are going to be convinced by what I've seen written in here. Yeah, I'm just a bit shocked that in 1 minute we're talking about removing something for the complaint of a resident that likely moved in after its inception, and then here we are going to shove something in front of residents that were there first and have already put complaints in.
Any other speakers? I think you were, Councillor Andrew. I'll take your word for it. You're the seconder? Yes.
I actually think that this is a great initiative that's been driven from the community itself. Incredibly supportive of it. And I think, just like my vote on the previous similar item, there's 2 residents that have voiced strong objections. One, we've been notified, actually lives quite a distance away. The other one is still not within the closest possible proximity. So I'll be voting in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I concur with the comments of Councillor Andrew. There is quite a bit of detail in there that there is a significant amount of community support through the petition and the feedback that was received through the drop-in session that was held at the community centre there. I suppose it's quite a, I'm going to say, sort of insignificant asset compared to the sort of brick and mortar ones that we have. It's sort of just a couple of piles of dirt. I'm sure if at some stage it was no longer wanted, we could just put out an ad saying, bring your loader, take it away, leave the site level. It'd be gone for very little cost. So I am quite happy to support the recommendation.
Councillor Sciano.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I concur with Councillor Andrew and Kitchen. This has been driven by a community group with very small cost to the Shire, but a very small asset that potentially could bring plenty of joy to obviously the people who use it and who activate it. Without disregarding the, I think we got one main submission from a concerned community member who doesn't live in proximity, but they did quite a detailed submission. I've had a look through it. I feel that their understanding of the project and the scope of the project may not have been correct. I think there was some idea that this would be a fully pledged concrete skate park of such. It's not. It's a very simple gravel/basalt blue metal type construction, similar to the one in Jalora and the one here. Not saying that the one here could definitely do with a little bit of love, but you know, I've worked with caravan parks all over the state, RAC, a big one, and the big names, Discovery Park and so on. So I get to work with them and I get to see a lot of what they do. And in these sort of locations, particularly like Peppermint Grove, these are actually a very familiar asset. They're very well activated. And you remember, we have a fantastic community out there, but we also have a community of people who buy holiday homes and come to stay for in the short-term accommodation. And it's a holiday destination. It's probably the best tourist asset, one of the best tourist assets that we've got within our Shire. And we, I think, have a role to provide great activities and facilities for the people who live there, but also for the people who visit. And again, as I say, this has been driven obviously by the community group. I've had the opportunity to speak with, and I play favourite, some of my favourite Peppy Grove residents today about the issue. And you know, I know there is some concerns around it, but it is also next to a basketball court. And apparently what we've learnt from our last couple of items is basketball courts are very loud. BMX bikes, whoever or not, they've got rubber tyres. They make a bit of a screech here and there, particularly if you've got a little bit of skill. But I'm confident that the actual project itself will have minimal impact on the community around it, and I think it will be a great asset for the people of Peppermint Grove and the people who come to visit, and hopefully stay for a little longer. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I'd just like to say I am supportive of this motion also and concur with sentiments of Sciano, Andrews and Kitchen. But I'd just like to make a note. I also thank the residents for contacting me personally. I believe that it's helped create awareness and investigation more so amongst councillors on this motion and issue. And yes, thank you.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will also be supporting this motion. I'd like to perhaps point out that at the end of last year, some of the councillors, we had the pleasure of going to the 20-year anniversary of the construction of the Jalora bike track, which was a tremendous community event. It's been a wonderful community facility. My kids grew up using it and enjoyed their time using it. There is a half-court basketball court at the bike track in Jalora as well as the skate park. The community, or the issues, the antisocial issues that do occur there, invariably occur in the evening. Okay, there are lights. You know, you push the button, the lights come on at the Jalora skate park. That's when antisocial concerns happen. If this facility doesn't have lights on it, so it's only used during the day, unless kids, you know, rock up with their headlights, put the ute headlights on and go for a burn, then it becomes a police issue. Once again, a ranger issue, a police issue. So I think not having any lights, I think it's a great facility like the Jalora one, very good for the young people in Peppermint Grove, and so I would endorse it absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? We can have a vote. Those in favour? Those against? Okay, that's carried 7-1. 15.3 accounts paid during the month of December. Do I have a mover? Councillor Andrew. Seconded. Councillor... This almost failed for lack of a seconder. Councillor Sciano. Yeah. So, if there's any more no discussion, we can put that to the vote. Is there any discussion? Councillor Noonan? No. Okay. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The financial statements, 15.4. Councillor Andrew, seconded Councillor Kitchen. Discussion? None. Those in favour? That's carried 7-0. Councillor Clues is absent. Okay. So now new business of an urgent nature. There is none. Second public question time. Anyone with a pressing question? Any motions without notice? No. Notices of motion for consideration at the next ordinary meeting of council? None. Items for consideration perhaps behind closed doors? 20.1.
Did you want to talk to me? Oh. I can't reach the oval. Excuse me, Councillor Kitchen. So, Councillor Southwell's left the room being the subject of the motion that we'll be discussing. We're up to number 20.1, Jalora Bushfire Brigade membership. Do I have a mover? And seconder? Thank you, Councillor Scott. Sorry, and Councillor Kitchen moved it. Yes, Councillor Noonan?
I'd like to move a procedural motion that a deferral for this motion.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just a
That's okay.
point of order. As the mover, I believe I have.
No.
I believe I can be.
Procedural motion takes precedent.
Someone with more knowledge of me would have to be the...
The procedural motion can be the motion that was made adjourned carried, will take on a motion or amendment continue at a time. End date specified in the motion. The names of members spoken on the matter are to be recorded. That's really it.
Uh, 12.1E, that the motion lie on the table.
Can we do that after it's been moved and seconded? Yep.
Correct. So once the motion's been moved and seconded, the procedural motion can be referred. The definitive ruling is clause 12.2 in standing orders, Councillor Kitchen, if that's what we're talking about.
Yep. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Noonan's procedural motion?
Rosina, come on, for God's sake.
Well, it lapses if there's no seconder. That would do adjourn the debate.
So the procedural motion lapses for want of a seconder. So we shall continue. Councillor Kitchen, you were the mover, weren't you? Yep.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chair. Quite an interesting item before us. Certainly in my case, when I was elected, it's something I never thought I would ever have to consider. But nonetheless, it's before us. Earlier tonight, we've discussed ways of improving relationships with our fire brigades, and that's all of them. As I said, they need to know that they have our support. They have put this recommendation before us. That is what the brigade obviously wants. They've outlined their reasons for it. That comes from their own experiences. Regardless of anyone else's internal conflicts or perceptions, this is the information we have before us, and I do believe we should be supporting the Bushfire Brigade in their decision, and I'd encourage councillors to endorse the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, I concur with what Councillor Kitchen has said, and it's been already mentioned that we've dealt with Bushfire Brigades earlier this evening. And as I said in that there, with the statement we shown last month outside, the support that the Bushfire Brigade have got, unanimous support through our Shire, and I think what I hear and what I've heard and what I've been told, I wouldn't like to see the Duroc Brigade disintegrate over this application, and I think we should back the Duroc Bushfire Brigade in their what they've made of this situation, and I think we should back them fully. Probably just, Councillor Southwood, if you all would have got it, send out a thing, and I was quite interested in point 6, which says, please remember the question you are being asked to consider is not about me, but about due process and fairness. I think Councillor Southwell has put his hand up to appeal, so I think it is about Councillor Southwell. And I think in this room we should be supporting the Duroc Bushfire Brigade 100%.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion, to the recommendation or the motion?
I'd like to speak against the motion. So the motion is, or the recommendation is, that the decision by the Jaloorap Bushfire Brigade refuse membership that's subject to this report be upheld. So the Jaloorap Brigade refused the application for membership that was put to them by Councillor Southwell, President Southwell, after they had received it, accepted it, forwarded it on to the Shire for it to be investigated. This is all part of a very messy situation, a very unfortunate situation, a situation that has caused division between bushfire brigades and within bushfire brigades. Former Councillor Hearn alluded to the fact that I was a former bushfire member of a bushfire brigade. I was in the Jaloorap Brigade for 5 years, as former Councillor Hearn would attest. In any organisation where you're involved in occasionally matters which could be dangerous situations, emergency situations, which in fact could be life and death situations, people are going to make mistakes. Things are going to go wrong. It's very, very important that you learn from those mistakes. Councillor Southwell, in his desire to find out what went wrong in the October fire in North Boynup, brought a couple of motions to this council, which in hindsight were probably unwise, because they were seen very much as a direct attack on the chief and the deputy chief.
Sorry, Councillor Noonan, could you keep your remarks to the motion that's in front of us?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
The Jaloorap Bushfire Brigade accepted this application prior to some of the events of that investigation occurring. They were happy to receive his application and to forward it on. Subsequent to the two motions, or the one motion that was put, the other one was withdrawn. Subsequent to that, and we had the display of firefighters outside in support, which is great, terrific. The application is withdrawn. So I can appreciate that Councillor Southwell has been a polarising character in this whole debate. My point, and I think the point that Councillor Mogg was making in the very first motion that we looked at this evening, was that we have to be able to move on. We have to be able to put this all behind us and move on. We have to improve. We have to work together. Now, and that also means that we actually have to bring everybody else along with us. Okay, it's a little bit like Toy Story. You know, nobody gets left behind. Okay, and I apologise if I'm boring people in the gallery, but this is what councils actually do. We discuss these things. We debate these things. And I appreciate the indulgence of the Deputy President for allowing me to flesh it out. We have to make sure that as a Shire, as a council, Shire workers, bushfire brigades, that we all get on, or that we all at least can get on and do things and cooperate. We have to know that if my house is burning down and I'm not able to get there, I know that I'm going to be somebody else has got my back, that they're going to look after it, you know, and there's no question in my mind that that's the case, okay? That's the way we've got to be with everyone, with everyone. This motion, or this refusal then, for the membership of Councillor Southwell, who has got bushfire fighting experience. He was a volunteer down at Bridgetown. It is saying, because you have been divisive, we're going to leave you out. Okay, and that occurred in between receiving and accepting the application and the subsequent events. Now, somebody can be annoying, they can be divisive, they can be a pain in the neck. However, that doesn't mean that we should exclude them from involvement in any particular organisation.
Point of order regarding time.
Okay.
Did you have a final
1 minute to wrap up. 1 minute to wrap up. One of the points that Councillor Kitchen made in the very first item that we debated was that DFS sets the rules, the procedures, the standard operating procedures. I've worked in organisations like the Australian Army Reserve, the education system, where things have gone wrong. Okay, one of my corporals carrying a radio climbed over a fence and broke his leg. As a result of that, an investigation was held. Procedures were changed. They were improved. Any teacher now wanting to go... years ago, we used to take kids on excursions. We'd just say, jump on the bus, kids.
Not only is the time an issue, but I don't think this is any longer discussing the item.
It is. It is discussing the item. It is discussing the item. Systems can improve. Systems can be improved, and the way that they're improved is by having good investigations.
Sorry, I agree with Councillor Clues. You're not really speaking to the motion or the recommendation that's in front of us.
Okay.
Did you have anything final to add?
No, other than I believe that we should work together. That when things go wrong, we should acknowledge that things go wrong. We should be able to look for ways to improve things, and we shouldn't leave people behind just because they might have an abrasive manner.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Noonan. Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have some queries around dealing with the motion tonight, if I can ask them through you. The item was initially meant to be behind closed doors. I understand Councillor Southwell has requested that it be considered in the public. Councillors have done a very good job at not discussing in full detail the items of the confidential attachments, but I guess I'm looking for confirmation from the CEO if, now that the item is in public consideration, that we are actually able to discuss the actual findings of, you know, what the actual process was and the details of those attachments marked confidential by the CEO. And secondly, whether or not we need to do anything procedural to address the fact that we are not behind closed doors in a behind closed doors item.
So I can address some of that. I was made aware prior to this evening that Councillor Southwell would be leaving the room, and thereby me taking the chair. I've already had a conversation with the acting CEO regarding some of the procedural things associated with that. Unless it was his advice to me that unless there was a procedural motion put forward that we go behind closed doors, that we didn't need to go behind closed doors to deal with it. There wasn't a procedural motion to go behind closed doors put forward, so we've remained out in the open in a normal meeting. Your first question I will direct to the acting CEO to answer.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Councillor, the attachments to this report mention many names, and I would prefer to keep my original declaration that each of those is confidential. That doesn't necessarily stop you from talking to them or about them. I would just caution you that you wouldn't mention the names of people who are at various committee meetings or the like. But in a general way, there's no problems, but we wouldn't be distributing those confidential items in general.
If I may continue? Yes, it does, if I could continue. Yeah, look, I'm happy with those answers. I'm not particularly looking to release the confidential documents. I just wanted to have the feeling that councillors were actually able to discuss events and details leading to the item that we've got in front of us, because I do notice that the public agenda doesn't actually say what the report is. That's in the councillors' report. I think it's been made clear, obviously, that the Bushfire Brigade has requested, obviously, to refuse the membership of Councillor Southwell off the basis of after considering his taking his membership for consideration late in December or early in December, and obviously he's filed an appeal to their decision, which has now come through the Shire, which is how this has managed to become a brigade issue to now a Shire issue. You know, the brigade had made that decision. The councillor in question had obviously made an appeal, and now that is why it is in front of us to deal with as an item of the Shire. I find that I think simply I don't wish to speak overly on the individual or the events. I just think I feel that the findings, and I think again councillors before me have said this, I think the Jalora Brigade is in their have made this suggestion to us. Our staff have acknowledged that it was the right decision by the brigade, and they've come to us and said that this is on found terms, and I think to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sciano. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I have some. I've heard the argument that that Mr. Southwell, as I think we're supposed to be referring to him in this report, that his application was accepted at some point, and that's why he should now be given this position. His application may have been accepted. He may have begun his training. He may have completed his training. If the brigade wakes up tomorrow and feels that they can't trust and work with someone, it doesn't matter what part of the application process they're at. They've clearly got an issue in the brigade with this person, as is reported in the background. Now, whether these things that they are stating to be concerned about are true or not, it's not for me to judge. It doesn't matter. The point is there's clearly an issue here. Now, I couldn't sit here and overrule or decide to overrule or vote to overrule the officer's recommendation, have Mr. Southwell be part of the brigade and go out and injure or hurt himself or worse because of any lack of connection with that brigade. I couldn't do it. I don't think that's allowable. I was going to mention one other thing, but I think we're done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mogg, since you and I are the only two that haven't spoken? No? All right, I have a comment to add, and then Councillor Kitchen can have the right of reply if he so wishes. I don't think there's been anything presented that indicates that the denial of Mr. Southwell's Fire Brigade membership is contrary to the Brigade's legislated powers, that the Jalora Fire Brigade Committee has acted outside their authority, or that the sequence of events was outside of the normal membership application processes. I also have no issue with the committee's reasoning for denying Mr. Southwell's membership. Fire brigades are often aptly described as a brotherhood. Firefighters are people who willingly put themselves in harm's way to protect the lives of others and their property. Their decision in doing so, I believe, hinges on them having the utmost confidence that they have the full support and camaraderie of their fire captain and fellow brigade members. After the events of the last few months, I can't fault the Jallura members who have the perception that Mr Southwell shouldn't be a member of their brigade and have voiced their concerns as such. As far as I'm concerned, the brigade members have spoken, and I think the committee have listened to their members and have made a lawful decision, and I'm going to vote in respect of their wishes tonight and uphold their decision and vote in favour of the officer's recommendation. Would you like a right of last response, Councillor Kitchen?
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair. I suppose I agree with a lot of your comments there, and I suppose just because it has been mentioned a few times about the process, I did have it clarified this afternoon that we do have a proper process for accepting memberships. At the start is accepted in terms of I accept for processing. It doesn't mean that you are accepted as a member, because there's checks and balances that need to be gone through as part of the policy, and that includes a volunteer check. And I think Councillor Andrew perfectly summed that up in her comments there. I suppose I just encourage councillors to support this recommendation tonight, because this issue just needs to be put to bed. Whatever your thoughts on what has happened in the past few months, it just needs to end. I don't like having fellow firefighters ring me rather upset, some reduced to tears. It's not what you do the role for. You do it to help people out, to defend someone's property and your own. So let's put this issue to the end, and I do just want to say that I think the discussion around this table tonight has been very professional and very respectful, and that's quite commendable.
And with that, we will vote. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation? All those against? The motion is carried 6-1. Yeah, 6-1. Yep, you can go and get Councillor Southwell now, please. Councillor Clues.
There being no further business, we'll close the meeting at 8:21 p.m. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance.